Derek Belton didn't look the part of the CEO of a successful car dealership chain. In fact, he looked like someone who didn't belong at all. Gone were the suits and polished shoes, replaced by old Levi's, worn sneakers, and a Tennessee. Titan's cap pulled low over his forehead. He wasn't about to make a big entrance or flash his wealth today. Instead, he parked his 2011 Honda Accord a block away from the dealership and walked down the street with deliberate steps, the rough asphalt crunching beneath his feet. The dealership in Charlotte, Tennessee had once been one of the busiest in the area, known for its reliable mid-range vehicles and the trust customers had in its reputation. But lately, Derek had been hearing unsettling whispers. Complaints about overpriced warranties, shady sales tactics, and people being sold deals. They didn't understand. These were minor issues, but enough to make him pause and wonder. He wasn't here to make a grand appearance. He wasn't here to fix it with a flashy display. He wanted to see the reality of what was happening under his name. As he approached, the showroom, the sign for Belton Auto Group, loomed above him, a stark reminder of what was at stake. He hesitated for a moment, taking in the sight of the place that he had built. Then, with a deep breath, he pushed open the door. The bell above, it chimed, but no one seemed to notice. The faint smell of coffee and cleaning products hung in the air. The usual hum of activity was muted. Salespeople chatting by the water cooler, employees distracted by their phones. No one offered him help, no one greeted him. The showroom felt empty, as though it was losing its energy, its sense of purpose. He wandered past the service bay where techs were hard at work, oblivious to his presence. No one looked up, not even when he passed the waiting area where a man sat flipping through a magazine, his daughter playing with a cracked iPad. There was a distinct lack of attention, a noticeable absence of care. It stung more than Derek had expected. His eyes were drawn to a salesman in the corner, speaking with an older couple who looked increasingly frustrated. The salesman's tone was aggressive, too fast, too loud. "You won't find a better deal anywhere," he was saying. "This car is barely used and comes with a full warranty, but I can only hold this price if we sign today." Derek felt a twinge of irritation. This wasn't the approach he had trained his staff to take. It was high pressure, manipulative. He moved on, his thoughts turning dark as he passed by a young woman, maybe in her late 20s, standing with a salesman. The woman was clutching an envelope in her hand, looking nervous, as though she was fighting to keep it together. The salesman, wearing a navy blazer, spoke with a practiced charm that felt almost rehearsed. "You'll get full coverage," he assured her. "Bumper to bumper, powertrain, even the air conditioning. And the $895 fee? That's just a standard part of the deal. It covers the pre-delivery inspection, interior cleaning, anti-theft VIN." Etching. Derek's heart sank. He knew immediately something was wrong. The VIN etching had been phased out years ago, and the warranties weren't structured this way anymore. The numbers the salesman was throwing out were inflated, a web of lies wrapped in smooth words. Derek stepped back, just out of their line of sight, as disappointment settled over him. This wasn't just one bad apple. This was a pattern. He needed to see how far it would go. He watched from behind a row of brochures as the salesman continued, the woman nodding along, her eyes focused on the paper she was holding. The baby in the carrier next to her squirmed and whimpered, but the woman barely acknowledged it. She was too caught up in the deal, too focused on staying composed, calculating whether she could make the numbers work. Derek's chest tightened. She was too vulnerable, too overwhelmed to see through the manipulation. The salesman lowered his voice, his tone smooth and coaxing. "You don't have to worry about the credit check," he said. "I know how to work the system. I can get you in today, no problem. We'll get creative if we have to." The woman hesitated. Her eyes flickered toward the exit, but the salesman was relentless, pressing his point, his voice steady, almost reassuring. Derek clenched his jaw. He didn't want to intervene yet. He needed to know the full extent of this before making himself known. The young woman, Monique, was already vulnerable, single, struggling, and likely using the last of her savings to make this purchase. She needed to hear the truth, not this barrage of lies. But Derek wasn't ready to show himself. Not yet. Instead, he walked toward the far end of the showroom, where he saw a teenage boy standing near a pre-owned SUV. A salesman walked past him twice, neither greeting nor offering help. Derek stepped closer. "You looking at this one?" he asked. His voice casual. The boy looked up, surprised. "Yeah, maybe. My aunt's outside. She asked me to check it out while she parks." Derek nodded. "You know what kind of engine it has?" The kid shrugged. "Not really. She just needs something safe. Her car broke down last week." The exchange was brief, but it spoke volumes. The boy was being ignored, overlooked. He wasn't just another missed sale. He was another person who had been ignored, forgotten. Derek felt a pang of regret. How had they gotten here? He approached the reception desk, and the woman behind it didn't even look up. She tapped away at her phone, chewing gum, scrolling. Derek stood in front of her, waiting. 10 seconds passed, then 20. Finally, she looked up, blinking slowly. "Oh, hey, do you have an appointment?" "No," Derek said calmly. "Just browsing." She smiled lazily and waved a hand toward the showroom floor. "They'll get to you." But they didn't. For the next half hour, Derek wandered from department to department. No one approached him, not even to ask if he needed assistance. The only person who offered help was Trevor, a young lot attendant no older than 19. "Need anything?" Trevor asked, spotting Derek near the service entrance. "We've got water inside. I can grab you a brochure if you're looking for." "The new hybrids," Derek smiled. "I'm good, thanks. What's your name?" "Trevor," the kid replied. "You like it here?" Derek asked. "It's all right. People can be rude." Trevor hesitated. "Not just customers, managers too. Sometimes, but I keep to myself." Derek's heart ached. This wasn't just a problem with the customers, it was a problem with the culture, the atmosphere of the dealership itself. The way people were treated, the way employees were treated, had a ripple effect on how customers were treated. As Derek stood there, contemplating, he heard a familiar voice. The salesman from earlier, Brent Collar, was now walking Monique toward a side office. Derek's stomach churned. He followed at a distance, carefully watching. Monique still clutched her envelope. She looked unsure, overwhelmed, but Brent's voice was smooth, his words flowing too easily. Derek caught a glimpse of the paperwork he was holding. The numbers were padded, fees for things that didn't exist, warranties that weren't real. It was all a lie. They stopped outside the office, and Brent pulled out more paperwork, smiling as he handed it to her. "Here's the first quote," he said. "It'll look high, but don't panic. I'll work it down once I get your info in the system. This is how we start." Derek moved closer, pretending to browse a nearby display. He saw the quote. The EX padding was obvious. The charges for VIN etching, the extra warranty fees. It was all there. Every inflated, dishonest number. "Monique," Brent said, still smiling. "We're going to keep your monthly payment under $350. Sound good?" Monique gave a cautious nod, but her hesitation was palpable. Derek had seen enough. He stepped into the office, his voice calm but firm. "That doesn't sound like the protection plan we offer." Brent blinked, his confident smile faltering. "Excuse me?" I said, Derek repeated. "That plan you're describing doesn't exist." "Not like that." Brent raised an eyebrow, sizing Derek up. "Who are you?" "I work here," Derek said flatly, "and you're about to explain these numbers." He pointed to the quote on the table. Brent hesitated, but Derek wasn't backing down. "Show me where it says full electronics coverage. Show me the breakdown." Brent glanced at the general manager who had appeared in the doorway. His face drained of color. The general manager's eyes went wide. "Mr. Belton." Derek turned to Monique, his tone soft. "I'm sorry," he said. "This isn't how we treat people. Not here. Not under my name." The room felt colder now, tighter. Brent's bravado had evaporated. Monique, still clutching her baby, looked between the two men, confusion written on her face. Derek turned to the general manager. "I need a conference room, now." The general manager nodded, and Derek led Monique down the hallway, her steps uncertain. As they walked, the dealership seemed to freeze. Conversations stopped. Phones were placed down. Trevor, the young lot attendant, gave Derek a silent look of recognition, but said nothing. In the conference room, Derek pulled out the quote Brent had given Monique and spread the pages out. "Explain these," he said, still calm but unyielding. Brent shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know why I'm being grilled." Derek's voice firmed. "These are fake fees. VIN etching was discontinued. The powertrain warranty is limited to 5 years. Not the full coverage you promised. You padded this quote by over $2,000. Monique's hands trembled slightly, but she stayed silent, watching Derek. "You're not just bending the truth, Brent," Derek said. "You're breaking it." Derek Belton wasn't the kind of CEO people would expect. He didn't wear expensive suits or flashy jewelry. He didn't arrive at work in a shiny car or have a driver to whisk him away to meetings. In fact, on this particular morning, he parked his 2011 Honda Accord down the street, choosing to walk the extra block to his dealership. He dressed simply, in worn Levi's, sneakers, and a Tennessee Titans cap pulled low over his eyes. Today was not about status. It was about understanding. He passed by the clean signage of Belton Auto Group as he approached, feeling the weight of the company he had built. The dealership in Charlotte, Tennessee, had always been a pillar of trust, known for its solid sales and reputation for customer satisfaction. But recently, whispers had begun circulating. Complaints had trickled in, an extended warranty sold, to a customer who didn't understand it, a family in Franklin who claimed their monthly payments were different than agreed. Nothing major, but enough for Derek to wonder if things had started to slip. As he walked through the doors of the dealership, he could feel the tension in the air. The usual smell of coffee and Armor All greeted him, but the atmosphere was off. No one greeted him. He wasn't surprised. He had come in disguised, wanting to see what would happen if no one knew who he was. He wandered past the service bay, where technicians worked diligently on cars. Everything seemed normal there. But then he moved through the customer waiting area, where a man flipped through a magazine while his daughter played on a cracked iPad. Again, no one offered assistance. No one acknowledged him. He walked past a sales desk, where 2 salesmen were chatting by the water cooler. Neither looked up. Derek continued to the showroom, where a couple was engaged in a conversation with a salesman who was speaking too quickly, too loudly. The older man frowned, his frustration palpable. Derek overheard the salesman pushing hard. "You're not going to find a better deal anywhere. This one's under warranty, barely used. But I can only hold the price if we sign today." This wasn't how Derek had trained his team. He made a mental note to address it. As he moved further into the showroom, Derek spotted a young woman, perhaps in her late 20s, holding a baby in a carrier. She was speaking with a salesman dressed in a navy blazer, and Derek watched as he charmed her with words that were far from honest. The salesman was speaking about a warranty that didn't exist in the way he described it. The more Derek listened, the more disgusted he became. The salesman was lying effortlessly to a woman who probably had every penny she could scrape together riding on this deal. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the principle. This was his business, his name. But Derek didn't confront them yet. Not until he saw how far the salesman would take it. He stayed hidden behind a row of brochures, observing from a distance. The woman nodded slowly as the salesman continued his pitch, telling her that she didn't need to worry about credit checks because he could work the system. Her fingers tightened around an envelope she carried. likely her pay stubs or bank letters. The baby in the carrier whimpered, but she was too distracted to notice. Derek's pulse quickened, but it wasn't out of anger. It was disappointment. This wasn't the dealership he had built. This wasn't what he stood for. He needed to see how far the salesman would push, so he stayed in the shadows, watching the conversation unfold. The salesman continued, promising everything would be covered under the plan, including air conditioning and powertrain, but Derek knew the truth. These were lies, and they were being fed to someone who had no way of knowing the difference. When the salesman leaned in and lowered his voice, promising her that the car would be gone if she didn't sign today, Derek had had enough. He couldn't stand by any longer. He stepped into the office where the salesman was leading her, his voice calm but firm. "That doesn't sound like the protection plan we offer." The salesman blinked, caught off guard. The woman turned, startled, as Derek revealed his identity. The look of realization on the salesman's face was immediate, but Derek didn't let it go. He pointed to the quote on the desk. "Show me where it says full electronics coverage," he demanded. "Show me the breakdown." The salesman hesitated. Derek pressed further. "You're not just bending the truth, you're breaking it." And when the general manager walked in, Derek didn't hold back. He fired the salesman on the spot, but not before making sure the woman knew that this wasn't how things were supposed to be done. The woman, Monique, stood, visibly shaken. Derek's voice softened as he apologized for the way she had been treated. He handed her a card with his personal line, assuring her that if she still wanted the car, she would get it at the right price, with no hidden fees, no lies. After Monique left, Derek turned to the general manager, Jeff, who had been caught up in this mess. "We're not done here," Derek said. "I want every deal from the last 90 days reviewed. Refund anything that wasn't clearly explained, and I want one-on-ones with every salesperson. I want to know who thinks it's okay to sell lies." It wasn't just about one salesman. It was about the culture. Derek knew that things had changed. The dealership had stopped being about people and started being about numbers. It was time to change that. 3 days later, Derek walked into the dealership again, this time dressed in a tailored suit. He had scheduled an all-hands meeting with the staff. No more hiding, no more pretending. He stood before his employees, the same people he had once trusted to uphold the values he had built the company on. "I built this company in 2004, not with investors or a franchise deal, but with my name and my word. I promised I would never look someone in the eye and lie to close a deal. We've lost our way," he said, his voice steady, but filled with conviction. He looked around the room, making sure each person understood the weight of what he was saying. "Today is your wake-up call. If you've ever added a fee because you thought you could get away with it, or rush someone out the door just because they didn't look like they could pay, today is your reckoning." Derek then turned to Trevor, the young lot attendant who had shown respect to every customer he interacted with. "Trevor," Derek said, "come see me in my office after the meeting." After the meeting, changes came fast. Derek ordered a full review of Brent's deals. 5 were flagged for full or partial refunds. The culture needed a complete overhaul, and Derek was committed to it. He even brought back Arlene, a former employee who had left after saying the dealership didn't feel the same anymore. Now she was in charge of customer relations, ensuring that the customer experience was at the heart of everything. Within weeks, Derek could feel the change. The energy on the lot was different, more focused, more respectful. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. One morning, as he sat on the porch of his mother's old house in Jackson, Tennessee, Derek reflected on why he had started the business in the first place. It was about respect, dignity, treating people with honesty and care. A month later, Monique returned for her car's service. She smiled when she saw Trevor behind the desk, now a junior sales associate. They chatted, but it wasn't awkward. It felt right. Derek watched from his office, unseen. He didn't need the spotlight. The point wasn't him. The point was the business, the trust he had rebuilt, one handshake at a time. He had learned that businesses aren't built on profit alone. They are built on trust and how you treat people when no one is watching.